I didn't leave the city because I was brave. I left because I was unraveling in places no one could see. After Maya died, the world kept turning. Traffic lights blinked. Emails arrived. Strangers held coffee cups and talked about weather. But my world stood still. Grief doesn't make a sound loud enough to stop anything around you. It just drips slowly, relentlessly, like a leaky faucet in an empty apartment. So I packed a bag with barely anything. No laptop, no calendar. Just a small journal and a photo of her from our last trip together, the one where she laughed so hard her eyes disappeared behind her cheeks. The cabin wasn't on any map. I found it through a man I met at a used bookstore, the kind of man who speaks softly and smells like firewood and ink. "Go there," he said. "Nature won't fix you, but it'll listen." And so here I am, one wooden cabin, a stretch of pines outside the window, and silence thick, raw, undisturbed. The first morning I woke to birds I didn't recognize, the kind that don't sing for you, just sing because the world is still turning. The air was crisp, my breath visible. I stepped outside barefoot and felt the damp moss beneath my soles. And for a second, just 1 second, I wasn't thinking of her. I was just there. Not healing, not hoping, just being. And maybe that's where it starts. The second morning was colder. I stepped outside wrapped in an old knit sweater Maya had once bought for me, claiming it made me look a little less like someone lost in his own head. She was always half teasing, half true. The sweater smelled faintly of cedar and dust, like memory trapped in fabric. The trees outside stood still. Not a single breeze. It felt as if the forest had paused, holding its breath with me. I sat on the porch steps, a mug of lukewarm instant coffee between my hands, and watched the sky shift. It didn't rush to become blue. It didn't try to impress. It just changed slowly without apology. Maya used to say the sky reminded her of me. Not in the way you look, she would add, but in how you feel. You never hurry anything, even when you should. She meant it lovingly. I think. We met in a bookstore, too. Like something out of a cheap romance novel, except neither of us liked romance novels. She was reading a collection of Raymond Carver stories. I was trying to look like I wasn't staring at her from the philosophy section. Somehow we ended up drinking wine on a rooftop 3 nights later, debating the existence of soulmates and arguing over the saddest song ever written. That night the sky had been wide and orange and full of answers we didn't know how to ask. Now I look up at the same sky, and it feels like she's somewhere just past the clouds, too far to reach, but still watching. Still listening. I don't cry, I just sit. And in the stillness, I start to notice things I hadn't in years. A single pine cone on the step beside me. A squirrel darting across a high branch like it knows where it's going. The way sunlight hits the edge of a leaf and makes it glow for one brief, holy second. I write a sentence in the journal I brought. Maybe grief is not a thing to solve, but a place to return from. I don't know if it's true, but it's the first thing I've written in months that didn't taste like silence. It took me 3 days to feel the courage, or maybe the boredom, to step off the porch and into the woods. There was no map, no trail. Just trees rising like cathedral pillars and a soft carpet of pine needles that swallowed my footsteps whole. The air smelled of earth and age, like something older than sorrow. I moved slowly, unsure whether I was exploring or escaping. For the first 20 minutes, I heard nothing but the crunch of my own movement. Then I stopped walking, and that's when I heard it. Not a voice. Not even a sound exactly. Just the forest. Breathing. A slow inhale as wind crept through the trees. A long exhale as the branches settled. It didn't feel lonely. It felt alive. Like I had stepped into something ancient and kind, a presence that didn't need to speak to be understood. I sat on a flat rock covered in moss, its surface still cool from the shade. All around me, the forest held still. No phone. No questions. No grief chasing me with sharp teeth. Just breath. I closed my eyes. For the first time since Maya died, I didn't think about how she left. I thought about how she lived. The way she whistled through her teeth when she read something good. The way she touched every leaf when we walked, as if saying hello to each one. And I wondered, had I been too focused on the loss to remember the life? I opened my eyes. A bird, small, brown, and utterly ordinary, landed on a branch just a few feet from me. It stared at me without fear. Then, with a quick flick of its wings, it was gone. But it had looked directly at me. Not past me. At me. And in that moment I felt it. I am still here. Not whole, not healed, but present. I placed my palm against the bark of the nearest tree. Rough, solid, still growing. I whispered, not expecting an answer. Thank you for not asking me to be okay. The next morning I swept the floor. It sounds insignificant, barely worth noting. But it was the first time in months that I did something not out of necessity, but care. There was dust in the corners, pine needles blown in from the door I left open. A few strands of my own hair. Somehow they looked like proof that I existed here. I opened the windows and let the forest in. Not just the air, the sound of it. Birds calling in imperfect harmony. Wind brushing against wood. The distant rhythm of water somewhere downhill. It filled the silence without breaking it. I made coffee slowly, deliberately. I didn't scroll. I didn't check emails. I just watched the steam rise and vanish like breath I no longer had to hold. I sat at the table and opened my journal. The page from the forest was still there. Maybe grief is not a thing to solve, but a place to return from. I wrote another line below it. Today I swept the floor. Today. That is enough. There was no lightning bolt, no cinematic transformation. But something had shifted. The way people come home from a long trip and notice the smell of their house again, I noticed myself. The weight of my body in the chair. The taste of cinnamon I forgot I liked in my coffee. The faint ache in my shoulders, reminding me I'm still carrying things. But lighter. Later, I walked to the edge of the clearing and stood barefoot in the grass. The sun was warmer than usual. I stretched my arms up toward the sky, not in praise, not in desperation. Just to feel what it was like to take up space again. Maya once told me healing doesn't look like joy. It looks like dusting the windowsill, she'd said, even when you don't think you'll stay. I think I understand that now. The grief hasn't left, but neither have I. The rain came without warning. One moment the sky was a soft, muted gray. The next, it broke open. No thunder. No wind. Just a sudden, relentless downpour, as if the clouds had been holding back tears too long and couldn't anymore. I stood at the cabin window and watched as the world turned liquid. The pines bowed slightly respectful. Leaves trembled. The dirt path disappeared into streams. Then, without thinking, I opened the door and walked out. The cold bit first, then the wet. My sweater soaked through instantly, clinging to my skin like memory. But I didn't flinch. I didn't run for cover. I stood in it face up, eyes closed. The rain didn't ask if I was ready. It just fell. And for once, I didn't resist. I could feel everything. The sting of cold against my collarbone. The weight of water pulling my hair flat. The squish of mud between my toes. The sound like 1,000 tiny hands drumming on the earth, not demanding attention, but giving it. And in that wild, messy, beautiful moment, I laughed. Out loud. Alone. Like a man who remembered what it felt like to be completely here. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It was something older. Something deeper. Like recognition. I stayed until I was shivering, until my fingers numbed, until the laughter faded into a quiet smile. Then I went back inside, dripping and alive. I changed into dry clothes, made tea, and sat by the small stove with a towel over my head, like a child hiding from the world. But I wasn't hiding. I was recovering. Maya would have loved that rain. She always said storms weren't interruptions. They're invitations, she told me once, to feel everything all at once and know you'll survive it. That night, I wrote, "Today, I walked into the rain. Not to escape the pain, but to remember that I still have skin to feel it." That night, I slept without trying. No melatonin. No music. No half-hearted meditation app. Just the steady tap of rain on the roof and the strange comfort of clean fatigue, the kind that comes not from escape, but from surrender. And somewhere between one breath and the next, I found her. Maya was sitting on the cabin's porch, barefoot knees pulled up her chin, resting on them like she used to do on quiet Sunday mornings. She looked exactly as I remembered, eyes like dusk hair, still a little frizzy from humidity, a sweatshirt too big for her shoulders. "Hey," she said. Not like someone who returned, more like someone who never left. I sat down beside her in the dream, though neither of us moved. There was no rush, no drama. Just two people who once shared a world, sharing a moment again. "You still think I'm in the rain?" I asked. She smiled. "No, you're in the rain. I'm in your remembering." The wind moved through the trees. In the dream, even the silence felt alive. I keep thinking if I had said something different that day. I began. She didn't let me finish. "You loved me," she said, "even in the messy, quiet ways." I felt it. That was enough. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I didn't. It didn't feel like she needed that anymore. Or maybe I didn't. We sat there watching a sky that looked like it was forgetting how to be night. Before she left, and I knew she would, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry it all," she whispered. "Not forever." I woke up with a tear already drying on my cheek. But my chest didn't hurt the way it used to. The ache was there, yes, but softer. Like a bruise healing under sunlight. I wrote in my journal. Last night I saw her. She didn't stay. But this time she didn't have to. The morning after the dream, I stood outside the cabin longer than usual. The forest was still wet from last night's rain. Patches of mist clung to the lower branches. The soil smelled rich and ready, the kind of scent that makes you think of beginning again, even if you don't know how. I found an old rusted spade behind the cabin. The handle creaked, but it held. I didn't plan on planting anything. I don't even know what compelled me. Maybe it was the dream. Maybe it was something quieter, that ache you get when your body wants to do something your mind hasn't named yet. I dug a small hole near the front porch. Nothing special. Just a space for something to belong. Inside the cabin, I had a tin of wildflower seeds Maya once bought on a road trip. She said they were romantic in an unorganized kind of way. I had kept them all this time tucked in a drawer untouched. I poured them into my palm, tiny, almost weightless, yet somehow meaningful. I planted them with no plan, no expectation, no schedule for blooming, just trust. And as I patted the soil closed, I realized something. This wasn't about the flowers. It was about me. I had done something for the future, not out of duty, not out of grief, but because something inside me whispered, it's okay to build again, even from the ruins. Later that day, I brewed tea and sat on the porch. The same porch where I'd once sat, motionless, numb. Now I was watching the earth, waiting, yes, but not desperately. Just openly. I wrote in my journal, I planted something today, not because I needed to heal, but because I remembered that life still wants to grow through me. I found the letter paper by accident, tucked inside the back cover of Maya's old book of poems, the one she used to read out loud when the power went out, turning our living room into a tiny theater of whispers and candlelight. The paper was thick, slightly yellowed at the edges. She would have called it romantic just for how it looked like it came from another century. I didn't plan to write. I hadn't written her name in months, but something about that page untouched waiting made me sit at the table and pick up my pen. And for the first time, I wrote, "Dear Maya, I don't know why I'm writing this. You won't read it. I won't send it. But maybe I need to speak to you one last time. It's been 112 days. Sometimes I count backwards just to pretend I could undo them. You'd hate that. You always told me time wasn't something to hold, only to walk through. But Maya, I didn't know how to walk without you. The world feels slower now. Not broken. Just softer. Maybe because I've stopped pretending I'm fine. Maybe because the forest has taught me how to sit in silence and not be afraid of what comes. I want to tell you something I never said enough. Thank you for loving me when I didn't know how to love myself, for showing me beauty in the smallest things, the way you watched leaves fall like it was the first time you'd ever seen gravity, for leaving me your mess of memories, the kind I now realize are seeds, not ghosts. I'm not healed, but I'm growing, and today I planted wildflowers for you. When they bloom, maybe I'll believe that love never really disappears. It just changes rooms. Wherever you are, I hope the sky is gentle and the air smells like that morning we spent by the lake. Love me. When I finished, I didn't cry. I folded the letter, slid it back into the book, and placed it on the windowsill. Not to forget, not to let go, but to honor the part of me that still remembers. Outside, the wind picked up. A leaf floated past the window, and in its quiet spiral down, I saw Grace. It happened by accident, like most important things do. I was cleaning out an old drawer in the cabin. The kind of drawer that holds everything and nothing dead batteries, rubber bands, paper clips, dried leaves someone once thought were bookmarks. And then I found it, an old MP3 player. The kind with actual buttons. It looked half forgotten, like it had been waiting to be remembered. I didn't know whose it was, maybe a previous guest. Maybe Maya, maybe just a ghost of someone who needed music once. I stared at it for a long time. For months I had avoided music the way some people avoid mirrors, afraid of what I'd see reflected back. Every melody reminded me of her. Every lyric a wound reopened. But something in me, something quiet and curious, pressed play. Static first. Then a song I didn't know. Soft piano. A woman's voice, gentle but unafraid. The words didn't pierce. They cradled. You don't have to be ready to begin. You only have to be still and listen. I sat down, closed my eyes, let it wash over me. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just listened, and for the first time, music didn't hurt. It felt like someone was holding the parts of me I hadn't known how to name. Like the song knew what I'd been carrying, not to fix it, but to sit beside it. By the second chorus, I was humming. By the third, I was smiling. Not because I had forgotten Maya, but because I remembered myself. That night, I left the window open. Let the music drift into the forest. Maybe something would hear it. And know that inside this cabin, life had begun again in the shape of sound. I wrote in my journal, "Today I listened." And in listening, I returned to something I didn't know I missed. The flowers bloomed today. Not all of them. Not in perfect symmetry. But enough. Small bursts of color beneath the porch. Blue-yellow. One stubborn red. Wild and untamed, just like she would have liked them. I stood barefoot on the steps, coffee in hand, watching them nod gently in the breeze like they were saying, "We're here. You stayed long enough to see us." It had been 3 months, maybe more. I had stopped counting. There was no dramatic turning point, no moment where the grief folded itself neatly and left. It still lived in me. But now it had shape. Now it made room. The cabin was no longer a place I had run to. It was a place I had grown into. I still rode in the mornings, still walked the same path through the woods, still listened to the rain like it might teach me a new language. But something had changed, subtly, quietly. I no longer listened for her voice. I listened for mine, and it was there. Beneath the sorrow, beneath the stillness. A voice I hadn't heard in years, not since love made me fearless and loss made me quiet. It said, "Stay," not because I'm hiding, but because I'm healing. And this place, this life, this moment is mine. I didn't pack my things. I didn't write a goodbye. I just watered the flowers and whispered to the sky, "Thank you for holding me until I could hold myself." The end.